Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Does not know. She's working.
And I'd like to thank our candidates for being here tonight, and also thank you for offering yourselves and your time and your talent and your intellect and your heart to serve the city of Sammamish and the people out here in front. Let's give them all a hand. Can everybody hear me okay?
I can't hear up here.
Can we turn it up a little bit? Or I'll just talk loud. My wife says I talk really loud all the time. So thank you again for coming. My name is Bill Shaw, and I'm the general manager for the Issaquah Sammamish Reporter. And we're a part of Sound Publishing's East Side group of digital and print news publications. We're grateful tonight for the city of Sammamish to provide a great venue for tonight's forum. And we're really, really pleased to be here. And I'd like to introduce a few folks. First of all, thank you to the Platopians for Peace and Sammamish Friends for being our partners here tonight on this candidate forum. And I also would like to introduce my regional editor, Carrie Rodriguez. She's the regional editor for the Issaquah Sammamish Reporter. And also our timekeeper, Nicole Jennings. She's a reporter for the Issaquah Sammamish Reporter. And I'd also like to introduce Margaret Rotschach, who is our moderator tonight. She is a Microsoft alum and a leadership coach, and she is the owner of Alea Leadership Coaching and Team Development. We're very happy to have you tonight, and this is going to be great. And again, I'd like to also thank our local partners on tonight's candidate forum, the Platopians for Peace and Sammamish Friends. And before I hand over the helm to Margaret, I'd like to take a moment to note that our mission here tonight is to provide a fair and balanced venue where we all can hear about each of you candidates and your ideas and your unique perspectives, not only about the important issues of the day and how you are going to deal with them, but to also learn about your ideas and your ethos, and should you be elected, what you all individually bring to the table to serve the city of Sammamish and the residents that will vote you in. So again, thank you all for offering up to serve, and thank you all for being here tonight. We're very, very pleased and we're grateful. So I'm going to turn it over to Margaret.
Good evening, everyone. How is this? Is that too close? That's good? Okay, great. So hi, and thank you again for being here tonight, all of you. And today we are going to dive straight into questions. Each candidate is going to have 3 minutes to answer each of the first 4 questions. Then we're going to be shifting to a lightning round where each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the question. We'll have 3 of those questions. And then around 8 o'clock, we'll switch to the top 3 questions submitted by our volunteers that are looking at questions that you all submitted and finding themes and stuff that we're not covering in the current questions. And then you'll have a minute each for those questions. Is that okay? We're all on the same page. All right. Just making sure. All right. So we will start, Mark. So Mark Bowman.
Boffman with an F sound right in the middle there.
Oh, thank you very much.
Nobody ever gets it. That's okay.
Mark Boffman. So what is your vision for Sammamish in 2040 in relation to traffic, the urban forest, development, town center, and character? Include key features and amenities you would like to see in and around the city. How would you help ensure that vision is translated into the final product?
3 minutes, right?
3 minutes.
Wow.
You got this.
Sure. So the beauty of Sammamish, part of the beauty of Sammamish is that we have a good plan. The town center in particular, I think, is a keystone to what the city will look like in the future. It can help resolve a lot of the challenges that we have in front of us. We just kind of need to get it going and really see that vision happen. So from a traffic standpoint, it's hard to predict that far in the future. I think we have a lot of challenges right now in even measuring how traffic performs in the city, and we're going to start dealing with those. The council is doing that. I also think, though, that when you want to look that far into the future, there's likely going to be different technology that will affect the city, and we need to plan for that as well. In the near term, we need to start measuring our traffic correctly making concurrency determinations correctly so they're defendable, and making sure that the money that we invest in and around the city and other types of improvements in our facilities that are not concurrency related are invested wisely and in a way that actually improves the experience that people have. Specific things I'd love to see with the town center is as the town center gets built, truthfully, a lot of the areas around town center with the residential are kind of built the way they're going to be. There's some continued development that's going to happen, and we'll talk a lot about that, I'm sure. But the town center will bring more retail. I can't tell you how many people say, I wish we had more restaurants in Sammamish. It'll bring more retail opportunities, more housing opportunities and options for people. So whether they're just starting out or people who are retiring and want to downsize, they can stay in this community, stay connected to their church, to their friends. So the right kind of housing that provides that is really important, and that far in the future I will probably be utilizing that. So I hope to see that happen as part of town center. And I hope that we can take a strong approach to the environmental aspect of our community, which everybody cares about. And that means not only enforcing the tree retention ordinances that we have in place, and we have a new ordinance, relatively new, that I think people struggle to see how it's being enforced. I think we need to give it time. I also think we need to be more progressive about planting and retaining trees, and make sure that the character of the city that we all love continues in 2024 and 2030 and 2040. I'm very optimistic about Sammamish. We're building a city almost from scratch. We have a good plan. We need to make some adjustments along the way, and I think we're going to see really a fantastic place that everyone wants to continue to live in. So home prices are going to go up, folks.
All right, thank you. Yes, Jason.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I agree with a lot of what Mark just said. I think that's a very well said statement. I think that I'm excited to see where we go from here. It's been an incredible first 15, 20 years of being a city and watching it develop. I think housing and affordability are going to continue to become an issue, more so over time. I think traffic is currently our biggest issue, and I hear it a lot when I'm talking to folks. It's about less traffic and more trees every day, and that to me is something that I hope we can continue that trend as we move forward in the next 15, 20 years. The big thing for me is how do we get people to want to live here, stay here, work here, and not have it become a transient community. Lay down roots. And I feel lucky, blessed to be able to say that I've been able to do that with my wife for our kids and our family, and I just love calling Sammamish home. And I would hope that we can create the opportunity for other people too, at the same time recognizing that getting on and off the plateau right now, it's miserable. Certain days of the week, you just have to plan way far ahead and just get really experimental with the side streets and try and get off the plateau. So how we go about resolving traffic, how many new transportation corridors can we build? And more to what Mark said, I would love to be able to find more restaurants on the plateau. That sounds great to me. I just, be able to, we wind up going to the Highlands and we wind up going down the hill, and that's fine, but I want to be able to have lunch with her, go out to lunch with my wife, take the kids out to dinner, a variety of places to eat that we can actually choose from. And there's some good choices here now, and I love going to the Sammamish Cafe, and that's fun, but I would love to see a place where it more resembles a town, not just a bedroom community. And I think what Mark was saying about the town center, that's a great start. I'm super excited to see where that goes. It's got a great start. I love going to Metropolitan Market. It's expensive, but I do love going to Metropolitan Market. And I love to see how we're developing our community over time in terms of the kinds of growth that we're going to have. To me, the most important part of that growth is making sure, again, more to what Mark said, the idea that I don't think we're going to be in my house where we live over in Klahani for another 20 years. I can see the kids get out, and where are we going to live? We want to stay in Sammamish. Where are you going to go after living in Sammamish? You want to stay in Sammamish. This is where you want to be until you're done. So if we can get some housing that is more geared towards senior-friendly housing, a level unit that's got accessibility near a bus route, great stores, some shopping nearby, developing that so people can live and stay and work and call the plateau home, not just a place to sleep. So I hope to see that change over time, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where we go. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. And Karen Howe.
Hi, neighbors. So what I'm thinking about is if we've got this time to plan, then let's do a really good job planning. So let's think about, okay, let's take up traffic as just one. We should be planning now for autonomous travel. because at some point, we're going to have an autonomous bus that's going to be on the plateau and taking us off the plateau and down to light rail. So let's think about orienting our level of service around maybe transit as opposed to just single occupant cars. So that's a way to kind of look into the future and see what we could do proactively that could make a lot of sense for us. We already know that we're missing some wonderful attributes that would be terrific for keeping diversity within the plateau, like for seniors. So I've had lots of people talk to me about a senior center. My gosh, by then we should have a great senior center and a terrific one with awesome programs. We've got a good start right now with some free programs at the Y, but we could do so much more than that. Okay, and that brings to mind, well, what about those 18-year-olds who are so bored and look at you with an eye roll saying, there's nothing to do except hang out in the Safeway parking lot? Okay, we can do better than that. So let's take a look at creating the equivalent of like maybe what some of us had when we were at school, which is a sub or a student union building. What if we could do that where the Central Washington University is? Maybe they'd allow us to create a space or a place for kids that weren't students but were of a certain age, could go there, hang out, have their horrible garage bands play, and get them not near us, and then get some practice and just get some experience in life in a way that's a safe, sane environment that's comfortable because they're with their peers. Let's find ways also then to be more inclusive as our LGBTQ community as well. So by then we should already have great programs for that segment of the population that tends to be hidden and frankly tucked away. So we should be more inclusive in that way and frankly more out there, if you will. So in terms of revenue sources, because we're going to need that, because we're going to need money to pay for all this stuff. Right now we lose or leak over $278 million in retail sales off the plateau because they do go someplace else for entertainment and for restaurants, for example. So let's bring some of that back. You're not going to get all of it, but you're going to get some of it back. So sustainable housing, affordable housing will always be a challenge, but if we're looking at it now, we're going to be a lot smarter about it, which would bring me to smart cities. If I had more than 30 seconds, I'd be happy to talk about that more.
Thank you very much, Karen. And now, Karen Moran. Did I say your last? Moran?
Moran.
Moran, thank you.
That's okay. Everybody gets it wrong. Okay, so looking into the future, we've done a really good and have laid the groundwork. The city's done a great job to lay the groundwork for what will be a fabulous city 40 years from now. And in my visions, I see a free-flowing, multimodal, autonomous buses, transportation system that flows freely. And to do that, we're going to have roads. We're going to have corridors. We're going to have, as we have Issaquah and Redmond that is planned as light rail places, whether we liked it or not, whether we voted for it or not, it's going to be there, and we need to figure out how to get our citizens to those places and also to look at other ways to just move people within the city. Some of the other cities are looking at different ways of putting in trolley services that just do a complete round so kids can get on at one place, take it to school, get off at another place. I envision that we have that mixed in with, all sorts of different types of busing and all sorts of, programs mixed with our businesses so that we have partnerships. I hope that we find ourselves to be a tree city. We are under and looking at the urban forestry plan right now. And I would like to see that we not only retain more trees as we're making developments. I hate the clear cutting that's going on, and I think everybody else does as well. But to not only save some of those trees, but we should also be in a regular program of planting trees annually. We should be a tree city. We should have an arborist on staff would be my dream for that. I'd like to see a robust community for businesses. We have so many businesses that are in the city that, when we plan the town center, we planned it with mixed usage with that in mind. When I was on the Planning Advisory Board and then the Planning Commission, we did numerous surveys and numerous meetings with public outreach to see what people wanted up here. Everybody wanted boutiques. They wanted small businesses. They wanted restaurants, was actually #1, so that's funny, that keeps getting mentioned. And that is what, in my vision for 40 years from now, I see in our small downtown, which will be town center. And with that, I don't believe that we should do anything we should be encouraging businesses to come here. That would be not having a B&O tax, because that is not encouraging. And I believe that we should be finding a way of communicating to the business world that we want them here, and then we also need to have, in our town center, we need to have multimodal ways to get around that center. To say that everybody's going to walk, that's not going to happen. We live in the Northwest and it rains most of the year. So people are going to need to have, they're going to have their cars, and there's going to be other ways of transportation, in my mind, that will be available 40 years from now.
Thank you. Rituja, could you pronounce your last name for me so I can learn it?
So my name is Rituja Indapure.
Indapure. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you and good evening, everybody. I love this question because you want us to imagine, how we would want our city to be. 15 years ago, my husband and I moved to Sammamish because we came here to raise our family. We came here because of its great public schools. We came here for the open spaces, parks, and also for the safe and diverse neighborhoods. So for me, when I look forward into the city, I definitely want these things to remain. And what I would like us to prioritize is really our urban forest plan, because many of us have come here for the greenery. I see in the audience people who've come here 30 years ago, people who've come here just 5 years ago. We all came here, and one of the things that attracted us was these beautiful trees and this almost sort of rural setting that we want, and we want it to live forever. So I would really like us to focus on our urban forest plan, because having a healthy forest plan and having healthy trees not only benefits us emotionally, it does social, economic, and environment impacts. So it does have a lot of impacts. One of the things that I see people not mention, and actually yesterday I was at an event talking to the mayor of Bellevue, and he casually mentioned that Bellevue, Redmond, and Kirkland are part of a triangle of the innovation. They're part of an innovation triangle, and I'm going, but we have so many technology workers and innovators and engineers in Sammamish. Why are we not part of it? So I would like us to aspire to be a technological hub as well, where we are creating solutions for the future, where we are tackling issues about traffic. And today I just saw an email saying that Ohio has adopted or is going to use INRIX, which is a locally Bellevue-based company, to manage their transportation and traffic issues. We have these technologies right in our backyard. We should be able to utilize them as well. Transportation, I agree with the solutions that have been mentioned, saying that yes, we need to have multimodal transportation. We need to have a loop bus that takes our citizens around. Also, another thing that I would like to propose is that we have almost 3,000 to 4,000 home businesses in Sammamish, but we do not have a place for them to meet. These kind of places where independent business owners can meet actually leads to creativity and networking, and it inspires different entrepreneurship as well. So I would like us to invest and investigate if we could have this hub in Sammamish. And overall, I want Sammamish to reflect the larger world as well. So I would like our teachers, our firefighters, our people who work in the grocery stores to be able to live in Sammamish. So we also need to plan and educate people more on affordable housing.
Thank you. Chris Ross.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I'll start with traffic, and that's the hottest issue in the city, and it really interrelates to all the other cities, whether it be the business environment, our finances. We are quickly, all of us, learning that we are really low on options. We can't build our way out of this traffic mess. Congestion is the big problem. Redmond has been pretty direct about telling us that transit is their focus, and Issaquah, our other choke point, is not interested in moving very fast on any further road improvements. So what do we have? We have transit solutions with our capital improvements. If you fall behind a Metro bus, you probably all noticed they stall the traffic. So we got to think about improvements such as turnouts for Metro and shuttles throughout the community. And our business community is suffering because the traffic congestion is reducing the volume, especially on 228th. So you got to figure out a way to enhance the commerce, reduce the reliance on property tax in this bedroom community, and invigorate our business climate. The town center is a huge opportunity for that. We got to make sure that we get the right mix of businesses so that people will go to one stop, and if they go to one store, they may go to another store, but they have an incentive to get in their car, shuttle, or whatever method to get to the town center and shop, and not shop off the island, as we mentioned. So that's very important. Urban forest management. We talk about the 35% tree retention. That's just that's a loophole that every developer can find. They'll do whatever's necessary to achieve 35%. Does it achieve the vision that we want? Does it achieve the urban design that we want? Does it meet our tree canopy goals that we want? No, no, no. We need to really focus on maintaining and enhancing our tree canopy. So every type of development proposal, if we reduce a certain amount of trees, we replace them and maybe one up on that. Let's make Sammamish the tree city, maintain it and improve it. Also in a good landscape design. So landscape design aesthetics are critical in our development. We need to work that subjective element in our proposals for development permit approvals. And then finally, I really like what Rituja, my opponent, talked about is home businesses. We have a lot of home businesses that need places to settle. We can really partner with our youth, develop our youth with a junior achievement and other youth organizations to run those centers and have a place rather than Starbucks for our home businesses to meet clients. And so I think that's a critical vision of Sammamish. So the vision is we're going to have less reliance on cars. We're going to improve the safety of our roads. We're going to improve the roads, and I'm told to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And John Robinson.
Thank you. I came out of the business world, and I can't tell you how many flights I took over Sammamish when Sammamish was growing. I used to come from Chicago, and I would often look out the window and see this beautiful, green, vibrant city that was growing before my eyes as I would come into SeaTac. So the vision I have is I see a dynamic, growing city that accommodates people of all kinds. We grow our businesses. We have a multimodal transit system that works for the city. Many of the things that the other candidates have said, I agree with. What this is going to take is going to take leadership, and it's going to take leadership to collaborate with our sister cities, with the state, and with the King County. As I said, I came out of business, and we know in business that to make things happen, both parties have to understand a benefit. And so I believe that if I were to come onto City Council, I would advocate for Sammamish, advocate with our neighbors, and work so that we become part of the region. As Chris just mentioned, we can't build our way out of this with roads. We're on an island here in a sense. We don't have the economics to do that, and geographically it's impractical to try and build our way out of this. So we need to work with King County, we need to work with the state, Redmond, Issaquah, and we need to find the benefits for the mutual parties so that we can work and collaborate and make this entire region work for us. On the aspect of business, we need to grow business within the city. And so how can the city help to do that? We can provide some tools, such as reliable internet service. We all know we're spotty with internet service here, and internet is an essential tool for success in business, particularly in today's world. So I would like to propose that the city partner with a reliable internet service so that we can make sure that businesses can function and operate in the 21st century. These are things that I see, and I see this wonderful growing city, which is dynamic and helpful and all-inclusive, and moves people about and is a successful place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Pam Stewart.
Thank you. So I talked to a lot of people about being an engineer. So I have a degree in engineering with a concentration in economics. So I'm always talking about being pragmatic. But you asked me, or you asked a question about vision. So when you asked me what my vision of Sammamish is for 2040, I have a vision. I have a vision of a family getting up on a Saturday morning, going for a bike ride and being able to bike from one side of town to the other, say over to Soaring Eagle Park, going for a short hike, then being able to bike over to the landing and be able to go for a swim. And we can do that safely because we'll have connectivity. Then we can bike over to the town center and get lunch and bike on home. And we never have to worry about biking on a street that has no shoulders or no bike lanes. And we can enjoy the beautiful attributes that our city has. I have a vision for our seniors being able to have transportation where they can use technology to have on-demand autonomous transportation that can take them over to the town center where they can shop, they can eat, they can go to the doctor, and then they can get transportation back home. And they can stay here and live in the city and live in their homes, but have what they need right here in the city. I have a vision of families being able to go to their ball games right here in the city because we have enough parks and recreation facilities that we don't have to drive to Redmond and other places to be able to do that. So when I think of vision, that's what I think of. I have these visions of all of our residents being able to do what they need in terms of getting around, working, and living in the city. Now that does touch on things like you asked for, what is our vision for things like urban forestry? Well, I want to go beyond just a tree canopy, right? I would like to see us by 2040 be well on our way to replacing many of the trees that we've lost in recent years, and I think we need to have very specific goals about how many trees do we want back and how do we attain that. Whether that's a tree planting program through our schools where we get classes to plant them every year, or however we go and approach that. But let's set some targets and some goals on getting that back. But I also want us to be a model city. I have a vision of Sammamish with all of our knowledge, with all of our education and our high-tech folks here, being the model city in renewable energy and being the city that everybody wants to aspire to be, right? Edmonds has a vision for how they're going to achieve all renewable energy, right? And they have a date and a plan for that. So I'd like to see us do more of that. I'd like to see us have more than 2 chargers for electric cars in the city of Sammamish. Okay, we have a lot of electric cars, and we should be encouraging more of that. So I have a vision for how can we go there and get that. And yeah, we need a vision for how we're going to connect with our neighbors. In talking with the mayoral candidates in Issaquah, they are actually ready to work with us. So how do we get together and form those partnerships and use our technology and have a plan for connecting us to the rail and connecting us with as many options as we can? So that's my vision. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. We're going to move on to question number 2. Listen carefully. So, detail how you would increase auto connectivity in the city, as well as how this relates to your specific goals for public transportation options in the city and safety and ease of use concerns for bicyclists on and around the plateau. Please use specific streets when possible. Yes.
Starting with me again?
Start with you again. We'll just keep it consistent.
Make the rookie go first every time. So one of the challenges that the city has faced and continues to face is the fact that we started out as a more rural environment and we're trying to create a more urban city. So there's a lot of streets that dead end, that don't connect. And the challenge is not so much that we need to connect them. The challenge is that people that live on those streets don't want them connected frequently. That's not a good plan if you're a planner in a city. It's not a good engineering approach if you're an engineer, which I am. What we need to do is find ways over time to connect some of those streets. 244th was a good example of a street that got improved and improved the connectivity. We don't have very good east-west connectivity. I know some of the town center plans indicate some good connections through Southeast 4th. That'll be a challenge because of some of the neighborhoods and some of the sensitive areas that are over there. But that's a key component of the town center, is to create that connectivity to the east. So we need better connectivity east and west. And of course, the fact that we're building these roads to a new standard, not the old rural roads. If you get the chance and look at the 1985 driving around the plateau videos on YouTube, it's really fascinating. It's really like driving in the middle of the country. We're not there anymore. So the good news is we're upgrading the roads. We're building bike lanes. We're creating safe spaces for people to walk. And I think that's really valuable. We need to make sure that we have connectivity on the sidewalks. Small thing, but it needs to be, we need to have diligence in paying attention to that. So for example, if you try to walk up from Inglewood Hill Road up to the roundabout, you're going to find that there's a break there and you have to walk on the gravel or through somebody's yard. We need to do some small things like that to make those improvements, connect the bike lanes. Trails is another key component of connectivity, which I think is as important as anything we do for safety of the kids. And truthfully, I love walking on the trails that we have, or taking a hike, and that's going to be something that incentivizes people to love their city even more. So how do we do that? We have some good planning for the trails that we have now, but we need to make sure that new developments are required to, if they're in the right zone or the right place, connect to those trails. A lot of this is about having a good plan. And one of the things that I really believe that the city has done a good job but is a bit behind on is having a plan, an overall plan for the city in the future, so that when a project comes in the door, we're not surprised and reacting. We got to stop letting the tail wag the dog. We have to be in charge. We have to start managing the growth in the city and address all the things that you talked about, which could be a series of 10 meetings that are 2 hours long, certainly not 3 minutes. I think all of those things are important, but we also have to remember that every plan needs to be adjusted as we go. Nothing is perfect. As technology changes, as things change, we're going to need to adapt. As the development that's going to happen occurs, we need to be able to adapt. And we'll create a city where people will love to live and be able to get around however they want.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Jason Ritchie.
I think Mark hit on a lot of, everybody hear me okay? I think Mark hit on a lot of very critical points there. For me, it is about, I'm a dad, and my wife and I see our kids going to school, and it makes us, frankly, nervous. Are they staying on the bike path? Are there enough sidewalks? Are people watching where they're going? Just those kinds of simple parent things that I think we can all share if you have kids. It's just something that we're all very attentive. We see this as our schools are our hubs of our neighborhoods, and to me, that's the focal point for me in my day, getting the kids back and forth to school, making sure they're safe. So to me, that's where I would start with that connectivity. Are we connecting our neighborhoods to our schools? I'll jump ahead because I want to make sure I'm saying this before I run out of time. I think there are 2 areas that will help us get people on and off the plateau easier, and that is working with King County to widen Sahalli 228th all the way to 202. It can be done. We need to work with the King County, the building department. We can make that happen, and that's going to get all those lanes widened all the way down. I know the reason we're not widening is because it stops at a certain point. We don't own, Sammamish does not own the bottom of 228 Sahalli Way. So what, are you going to widen it to a point and just have it get narrowed there at the bottom? I think we can widen it all the way down. I think that has to be a priority for us. Same thing with going over towards Issaquah Fall City Road, where it connects to Issaquah Pine Lake. If we could widen Issaquah Pine Lake all the way down to where it hits Issaquah Falls City Road and kind of blends in, that's going to get people moving. To me, that's the connectivity that I think about, trying to get people on and off the plateau from a commuter perspective, and I'm one of them. Whether I'm going north or south on a given day, that is the critical part of my day, and I think that that's something that we all kind of can agree upon, that it's not working the way it should, and what can be done now, and what can we do in the future to make it even better. At the same time, I'm a big fan of the Emerald Necklace. The idea, and if you haven't heard of the Emerald Necklace, I'll take a sec. That's this essentially an interconnected path all the way around Sammamish, completely surrounding Sammamish in an Emerald Necklace. It's just a great idea, and I think it's the kind of thing that we can all invest in as a community, so that whether your neighborhood's connecting to it or your school's backing up to it, and have it be lit and safe and off the road, so that we're all connecting through that kind of interconnected pathway. That to me makes so much sense. And the last thing I'll say is sidewalks and easements, and making sure that we're not, a lot of cars just go zipping down 228 so fast, and it's easy for me to say, hey, slow down. Maybe I should take my own advice, but it's really challenging to see how quickly people move up and down when there's a break in traffic. And I would hope that as we develop and we grow and we see more people moving on the plateau, that we're cognizant of that, and we're making sure that we're at least taking the time to know that this is a bedroom community, and we need to slow down and enjoy the view.
Great, thank you very much. And Karen, how?
So I guess the way I look at this is I'm kind of outcome focused here. So what are we really trying to accomplish with car connectivity? Really what you want, perhaps, is reducing your commute time. Maybe that's really what the answer that you're searching for. So as you look at the overlays of exactly how the roads look today, as was mentioned earlier, we don't have a ton of roads, and we have just that one 228th corridor that goes north-south, and not a ton that goes east-west. But there are things that we could do that would actually improve our commute times that may not have to do with actually building out the roads per se. Maybe that is working within the intersections and making sure that the intersections work exactly the way that they're supposed to. Now, in a perfect world, we'd actually have software that we'd be able to log on and change our intersections dynamically as traffic needs us to. We don't have that kind of a system today, but that would be something to aspire to. That would actually help with throughput of traffic. And again, I don't think it's a great idea necessarily to try to build our way out of it. It's really more connecting disparate people into multimodal types of transit. So for example, Sound Transit owes us a park and ride. Who knew? So they owe us this. They're going to have a heck of a time citing it. But what if we could cite teeny tiny or smaller little park and rides all over the city? Okay, now all of a sudden you're starting to solve that last mile problem where we're too far away from transit. But what if we could get ourselves a little closer to transit by getting to park and rides that transit could actually pick us up at? Now we might be able to cite those and get them scattered all over the plateau. Now that would help everybody.
Thank you.
Connectivity is a topic that there isn't an easy answer to. The connectivity of two of our main roads, which would be the Sahali Way, and where it stops at our boundary is at the top of a hill. The reason that that wasn't ever put into our city boundaries is because who lived here when that road collapsed? Yeah, it was up for a very long time. And so the reason that it wasn't put into the city was because when it was repaired, it wasn't repaired very well. So now we need to team with King County, and we should not be incurring that expense ourselves, but we should be investing in fixing that road. And the same thing goes with the area over on the Issaquah Pine Lake Road and the connectivity down to Issaquah. Those areas we need to work with our surrounding cities. We need to invest. To just build lanes for the sake of building lanes doesn't help us. We need to get traffic to flow. And so we need to make sure that we've got connectivity. We need to perhaps look at and I know they have, looked at a ring road to go up to Town Center, meaning that it would go from 4th down to Main, carry some of the traffic off of 228th. There are different ways that we can relieve the traffic congestion. I think we've got some roads that need to be connected. Some roads are not safe to open, but some are. And some may require us to do just minimal work to do that. I think we need to go back to look at, as we did on the planning committee when I was on the planning commission, we looked at a grid system, looked at punching 8th all the way through, looked at ways to have east-west corridors, now north-south corridors. It isn't that we want to pave 228th to 8 lanes. That's crazy. We need to have connectivity. We need to look at grid work. We need to put in roads where we can. And if we miss this opportunity now and we continue to build the way we are, it will be gone forever. Some of the other ways that I would like to continue on is looking at the public trails. The Emerald Green Necklace. I think that's a great way of connectivity. The bike trails, we should have more bike trails. Not necessarily on the roads. They can be offside of the roads and different ways to get around. I think that all these things are great ways to move people around, but building roads for the sake of putting pavement down is not going to get us out of the crunch we're in.
Thank you. Rituja.
Yep. Thank you for that question. When we think about auto connectivity and bicycle, I would like us to imagine, how are we going to work, and then how are we using autos and bicycles for recreation? Because I think those two are different experiences that we have, and I think majority of the people, when they want to know more about auto connectivity is when they're going to work or when they're out and about town, when they're dropping their kids off to school. And I think that is where our biggest challenges lie. A few weeks ago, the city had a transportation master plan roundtable, and I was on that table. And one of the images that stays with me is when they showed us a map of north-south connectivity versus east-west. North-south, yes, good connectivity. East-west, nothing. So when we are trying to go out to work, and as all of us know, Sammamish is essentially a bedroom community. Majority of our people go out of the city to work. So you see that all these choke points are near the Issaquah Falls City Road and near Issaquah, at 202. So we really need to work with our regional partners to be able to address these issues of connectivity, because we can, synchronize our lights. Maybe we can get all the slip turn lanes, but then how do we get our community to be at work? The other thing that we should be doing is working with big employers. I know Microsoft has a connector bus. I had heard Amazon is going to start one, but not all of us work for those big employers. How can we work with other employers to have, some sort of commuter bus which will relieve some traffic that's in the city? Another one that I would really like us to see is a loop bus within Sammamish. We used to have, I'm from Klahani too, and we used to have 927, which would come up all the way here to the City Hall and then go down to Pickering Barn. And I know that many people in our community use that bus. There were seniors who really liked that bus. There were some students who used the bus to go down. And I would like that route to come back again. The Metro actually sent out a very interesting survey a few months ago, and in that they asked what we thought about having hubs for car-to-goes or even bicycles. How would the community feel about that? Now, even if you try to bike on 228, it's hilly. I mean, we call ourselves a plateau, but we're not really a plateau. So one of the ideas that they had suggested there was electric bikes. And I thought that was a very interesting idea because, that will help you at least a little bit, over those hills. So these are some of the ideas that I would, like to see. And again, making those sidewalks safe, very, very, very important. Pine Lake, I've talked to moms whose kids go to Sunny Hills. They can't walk to school. Seniors who live in the retirement homes can't. I see them walking on the side of the road. Not dangerous. We have to fix that.
Thank you. Chris Ross.
Okay, with connectivity, I really want to start with the principal arterials. We got to make sure that we don't have surplus traffic going into our neighborhoods. So we got to focus in our improvement plans to make sure we're taking care of those. And also, with respect to getting people around the city, we talked a lot about shuttles, a lot about different methods other than getting in the car to get through the city of Sammamish. But one thing that is not mentioned is the fact that our bike owners, I talk to so many people that say, there's only 2 bikes or 3 bikes that go in the front of a metro, so that's not going to help a volume of bikers in this community. How do we get bikers to ride the bus? You need a secure place to secure their expensive bikes. They're all spending well over $1,000 for each bike. If we gave them a lockbox, kind of like the park and ride, but a lockbox for places and buses to meet them, they can lock their bikes, have it secure, get on the bus, then they ride home on their bus. They get their exercise for 30 minutes in the morning, and they also get transportation, public transportation, win-win. So those are the types of things that I would work on to try to help us get throughout the city and improve connectivity. Also, we have roads like it's called Pine Lake, where they use segment averaging, and the place around QFC is highly improved, and other areas aren't, and the whole corridor passes. So we got to think about our concurrency improvements and help with the connectivity, again, related to dumping traffic into our, collector arterials and other neighborhoods. So I'm very passionate about that as well. So I think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Chris, and John Robinson.
Okay, thank you, Chris. There's a lot of excellent ideas that everybody's offered here, and I'd like to take a different tack on this if I could. We have too many cars on our main roads at the wrong time, particularly in the AM and the PM. So we can't build our way out of this problem. So I think it's logical to me that we alter behavior. So what do I mean by that? Let me give you an example. An organization that I admire is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They have 2,000 employees. They built a parking structure for 900 cars. Obviously, everybody couldn't fit in the parking structure. So the Bill and Melinda Gates people, being very smart, found a way to incentivize their employees to change their behavior. They said, okay, we're going to charge you $200 a month to park here, but for each day that you don't, we're going to give you $30. They did the quick math. Within a month, the Bill and Melinda Gates parking lot was half full. That's in Seattle, I understand that. But we're facing a similar problem here. We have to amend or alter the behavior of the commuters that go north and south every day on East Lake Sammamish, Shahali Way, down to Issaquah. There are too many cars at the wrong time. I would like to work with employers. In our last forum, my opponent felt it wouldn't work, but I really believe through leadership, working with the major employers, if we find that right incentive point, we can change behavior of commuters. We can get people to buddy up. We can get them to find alternate means of getting to their place of employment. I think this is a thing that I'd really like to explore, and through leadership, I think it can happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Pam Stewart.
Thank you. Just to address that, the idea that you had proposed that I said I didn't think would work was when you proposed that Microsoft and Amazon alter the hours that people go to work. And I just didn't think that some of the largest multinational corporations were going to be able to alter their work schedules based on Sammamish's traffic. So just to clarify that. But in terms of connectivity, I think there are lots of different ways we can connect. We are going to have to make road improvements, and we do have to make them in a smart way, because being behind a bus on a two-lane road doesn't help anybody get anywhere faster. So there are some roads we're going to have to make bigger. There are some roads where we're going to have to create bus pullouts. We're absolutely going to have to get park and rides. I love Karen Howe's idea about exploring, can we have a couple of big ones or smaller ones, but we need park and rides because we need to be looking to the future. We have rail coming to Redmond and we have rail coming to Issaquah, and if we want to talk about connectivity, how do we connect to that rail efficiently and effectively? And that means cost effectively, and that means quickly. We need to look at, total trip times, right? So if you're trying to commute from here to downtown, it's a cost factor and it's a time factor. Right now, if I take the bus, I can take the connector to Microsoft, it triples my commute time. That is not efficient, nor is it effective. So when we talk about connectivity, we have to look at that. We have to solve all of these problems, and it is absolutely a holistic solution, right? It's how do we help the bikers get there? It's how do we help people walk there? It's how do we look to technology on that last mile? If we're looking ahead at autonomous vehicles, couldn't we have a service that has an autonomous vehicle, an autonomous electric vehicle that can come pick you up and take you to the park and ride or take you to the bus stop? I mean, let's be really innovative here, people. We are in one of the most densely populated areas with brilliant people and technology, and we need to learn how to tap into that and come up with these solutions. And that's what I mean when I say we should be on the cutting edge. We should be the model city for sustainability, and I think those are the kinds of solutions we need to look for. There are things we need to do right now, today, right? King County, Sound Transit, the Metro, they have programs that we could tap into, but we need to have the staff to go work on and build out those programs with them. So we need to be able to commit staff to work with them. They'll help us get some shuttles in here to solve some of our immediate term problems. But I think we really need to look at all of that. And I already touched on with my vision that we absolutely need to have connectivity for pedestrians and for bikers, not just for commuting. I don't know that those are complete commuter solutions, but they're solutions for how we get out and enjoy our city on the weekends. So I'm sorry I didn't name specific streets like you asked in terms of connectivity, but I do think our main roads, Sahali, 202, definitely need to be looked at for those bus routes.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so we're on to question 3, and I will switch up the order this time. So Rituja, you'll be up first, and we'll kind of go that way. Okay, so question number 3. Would you support tax increases to provide more services and infrastructure, especially in relation to mitigating traffic congestion more quickly? If so, what kind of tax would you support increasing or instituting, and why?
I think at this time, residents around King County and Sammamish are feeling taxed out. So my first option would not be to have a tax increase. I think what we need to do, we definitely need to make investments into our infrastructure, but what we need to look at what processes that we can improve in our current systems that can help us save money. We need to look at grants, because I know the city applies for a lot of grants, especially for infrastructure projects. We need to do that. And we need to, I know with the town center and having more businesses, we will be raising our revenue in that way. So we need to be also looking at those areas on how we can increase our revenue. But increasing revenue, increasing taxes would not be the first option that I would like to go through. I think if we had to raise funds to invest in our infrastructure, raising a bond would be an option that I would be willing to go forward.
Thank you. Chris?
No. First of all, we have to really look at our long-term plan. And the focus is on concurrency projects. Those are projects that support new growth, new development. We got to make sure that we are getting the right resources to fund those projects. And what we also may consider is fronting money that we get paid later from the developers. So if we got a new project with impact fees, we may consider giving the money up front early, but it's not a tax. It's basically out of our line of credit, upfront money, and then we get paid back. So doesn't flow through the taxpayers. As far as infrastructure, it's got to be part of our long-term plan. We got to look at the next 10 years and figure out how are we going to fund our sustaining infrastructure going forward. And as Rituja pointed out, we are tax fatigued, and we really have to be strong stewards of the tax dollar. We're not going to let Sammamish degrade, that's for sure. And if we get to a point where we got safety issues or severe infrastructure breakdowns, we will have to make it a priority, absolutely. But let's do it responsibly, and we will plan it through the 10-year horizon when we get these things done that may not be critical need today. So if it's a critical need today, I would put it in the safety category. That's how at the Boeing Company we prioritize projects. We looked at safety first. If it impacts safety, we fund it. If it's compliance, we fund it. If it's productivity, we fund it. Well, productivity is very analogous to traffic. If we have a serious traffic congestion problem, back to connectivity and spilling surplus traffic into our arterials and our neighborhoods, that may be an investment I would seriously consider as an urgent priority that we may want to take up. And then if we had to, we'd have to look at funding sources. I don't like any sales tax because it makes us non-competitive to our competitors. We want businesses to want to come to Sammamish, and we want businesses just to be successful in business, as well as the business and occupation tax on gross receipts. That's also a deterrent to business. It's not a good way to raise your funds. As finally, I don't like the utilities taxes because they attach to your utilities and they keep growing on us. So it really comes down to a bond, and I really abhor any further property tax increases for the citizens right now because we're paying a lot right now.
Thank you. John Robinson.
I think one of the facts of life that we've come to accustom to is that governments typically spend or overspend to the revenue that they receive. And I believe that Sammamish can do better than this. I believe that we need to take a very close examination of where the money is being spent and how we can become more efficient. Sammamish owes it to all the taxpayers, me and you and everybody here, that they be good stewards with our money. So before I would ever consider a tax increase or a tax of any type, I would like to look at some very critical points within city government as to how we can become more efficient. As I'd mentioned, I've come out of business. And in business, basic principles of accounting are that you can't overspend the revenue that you receive. And so you take a hard look, well, how do I staff? How do I pay? How do I take care of the business in a prudent way so that I'm not overspending? These kind of principles need to be applied to our city government here. As an example, we have a turnover in city staff. Our city staff has grown approximately 40% over the last 18 months. I would propose that through attrition, we cut back 10% of city staff. We're not firing anybody, but we're holding back from people who move on and go to a different position. We also, in our accounting, have some funny ways of transferring funds between the different budgets. I would propose that we examine those transfers very carefully and hold back 10% of the monies that are going from the operating to the capital budget. Right there, we could save approximately $800,000 a year. And really the point here is that it's a theme that I hear in governments, and that is we have to spend, we have to spend, we have to do this project, that project. It's a matter of prioritizing, and we have to counter that with good business principles on how we operate this city. So long answer, short response is no. I don't believe in any additional taxes, and we have to keep them low for our residents here because the city owes it to our residents as good stewards of our money. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Pam?
Great, thank you. No, I don't think we need to be jumping to let's go add a new tax. But I will point out that we just got done spending the first two questions talking about all of the projects that we need to invest in, right? So let's keep that in mind. That being said, I still don't think we need a new tax. But in terms of the staff growing, a big chunk of that staff growth was where we converted people who had been consultants into full-time employees. So we haven't necessarily had a net add of staff. We've just changed them from a consultant to a full-time employee. We also should keep in mind that I'd like to actually applaud the council in that on a per capita basis, we spend less than half. We spend about half of what Issaquah spends, and we spend less than half on a per capita basis than compared to Redmond and Bellevue. So we run a pretty tight ship here. So I think that's great, and I think we should continue to do that. It concerns me when I hear people talking about making cuts, because when we talk about things like these road projects, when we talk about the development that's already out there in play, all of that work requires city staff for oversight. Things like doing additional parks and recreation, right? We're looking at land acquisition. That's a big priority that we got back from residents. And we need to be focused on the fact that all of these projects require city staff. We have had turnover in city staff in part because they have been doing a lot of work, and I think that we need to make sure that we're staffed appropriately. So I'd like to make sure that we keep things in balance, right? We don't want to see a reduction in our level of services from our city, right? The biggest chunk of our budget is spent on fire and police, right? So when we talk about trying to cut staff, that is a very tiny cut in terms of our overall budget, right? I think it's 40% of our budget is spent on Eastside Fire and Rescue and our contract for police. And those are areas where, you know, I don't think we should be looking to cut right now because that speaks to safety, right? Safety is the first and foremost priority that any city should provide. So no, I don't believe we need to look at taxes in terms of being able to fund our projects. I think that good or bad, our property values are rising, and that means that our property tax revenue will be rising without increasing the tax rate at all. And I do think that if we do need to front load some of these construction projects, which in some cases wouldn't be a bad idea, a bond measure would be great. The inflation rate on construction is higher than the average inflation rate, and money is still historically cheap, right? We are still at historically low interest rates right now. So if we did need to raise additional revenue that we don't already have budgeted for, I would look to a bond measure first before I would go to any new taxes.
Thank you. And Mark.
Okay, let's be really clear about something because I think we're getting confused here. We have two budgets. We have an operating budget and we have a capital budget. The operating budget is fire and safety, police services, and the staff primarily. And that's when we talk about the crossover point and the concern that people have about our revenues versus our expenditures crossing. That has to do with the operating budget. And that's services. You mentioned services. You kind of mixed them together. That's the operating budget. Let's just start out with that one. The fact is, if you do the math, which I've done and kind of crudely, if we were to cut that budget by about $300,000 a year, we would push the crossover till about 2025 when the town center comes online more fully and is providing enough revenue to the city to probably overcome that difficulty. And the one way that I think that's not necessarily cutting staff or reducing services is the guy who usually sits in this chair, and I'll probably get kicked in the shins by him, but the city attorney. Right now, the city attorney is a contracted service. I'm not a huge fan of adding staff that you can never unwind in the future, but in that case, we're never not going to have a city attorney. So let's put that person on staff. We could probably cut that cost in half. Might be enough to pay to push our crossover point far enough into the future that then the town center will take care of it, and we will not have to raise taxes to fix our operating budget. On the capital side, let's also be very clear. A bond is not free. If we don't have the money to pay for the bond, it's not free money. We're still going to have to pay for it somehow. That may mean raising taxes. So a bond does not necessarily avoid us having to raise taxes. Let's not be confused about that. However, if people in the city are passionate about infrastructure projects, if we have a problem with one of our stormwater problems over here on the west side, and we have a slide, we have a emergency happens, something bad happens, then maybe we put it to the voters and say, do you want to issue a bond? And this is what tax we're going to associate with that to pay for that bond, to do those infrastructure projects. Two separate budgets, two separate problems. Let's not get them confused. Let's make sure that we give the taxpayers of Sammamish the opportunity to make the decision if the projects are important enough for them, for us to issue a bond and associate that with a tax, and they vote for it, fine, then I would support it. If they're not interested and it's not an emergency, then we need to just continue along the path of chunking away at these projects, have a good plan, follow that plan, use the funds that we have. Just because other cities do better than we do doesn't mean they're doing it right. We have been successful by being fiscally responsible, and we need to continue doing that and not talk ourselves into raising taxes just because our neighbors do it. That just because they do it doesn't mean they're right. We need to do it our way. We're building our city, not theirs.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Mark. Jason.
Sure. Hey, great ideas all the way around. I fall into the let's not raise taxes right now kind of category. I think we can do what we need to do as far as infrastructure developments. What Chris said really spoke to me. That we have some certain priorities here that you're not going to not fund a dangerous road, or like Mark was saying about a slide. God forbid there's a dangerous situation. I think you take those situations and you set them aside and say, well, of course, we're all going to do the right thing at the right time. I think what we're talking about, at least from my perspective, is how are we going to make this a better, safer, more transient, more transportation-oriented city, and how are we going to pay for it? And that's really what it comes down to. And I don't think there's a lot of appetite right now for people to pay more in taxes. ST3 and McCleary, I'm getting taxed pretty good. I like my home value going up, but at the same time, taxes are a pretty big burden right now. We have a pretty regressive tax system in this state, and that's a separate conversation, right? But I like the idea. I've been talking about bonds with people. I think right now we have some critical transportation and infrastructure needs. And I think that goes to what Chris was saying about productivity. The big concern I have is if I can't get to where I need to be on a daily basis, I don't want to live here. It's beautiful. I love Sammamish, but if I can't get to work and make money, I can't afford to stay here. I can't. These are choices I don't want to have to make. And if I'm making them and my family's making them, I'm sure that that's a familiar feeling for a lot of families here. So to me, transportation, investments in transportation, and I don't mean 10 years down the road. I mean right now. And I know I live in Kalani. I see what's going on with Connor Jarvis and Issaquah Pine Lake Road. And I know there are investments being made on Issaquah Falls City Road right now. And that's wonderful. I mean, critical, well thought out, well planned decisions to increase transportation and get cars moving. It's happening right now. And we've been really frugal about our tax monies and how we spend things over the past 15, 20 years. I think when the time is right and we see that there's a solution like widening Sahali or widening Issaquah Falls City Road all the way to Issaquah Pine Lake, I think we can do these things using bonds. I mean, like Pam was saying, money's cheap right now. Let's take advantage of it, knowing that, as Mark was saying, that the town center is coming online. We are going to be getting new property or sales tax revenue. We're extremely property tax dependent in our city's revenue. We need to figure out ways to diversify that, and the town center is doing that for us. We're at this really interesting point as a city, right? We're kind of maturing right before our eyes, right? It's like having a teenager living at home. You kind of seeing it happen. You're like, wow, what is this? And we're getting there. And it's a really fun time to be in Sammamish, but we have to be careful with the taxpayers' money. And I do not want to raise taxes when we don't need to.
All right. Thank you. And Karen, how?
So I think the question was, will I raise taxes? And the answer would be no. However, I will say I don't like being a one-trick pony. I am a business person, and I am quite used to being in an uncomfortable position where we only have a couple of revenue sources. So I like to find new wells of resource, new wells of revenue. So I would look at what can we do for retail taxes. That really is a nice thing to add to the coffers. What else can we do? We can take a look at our real estate excise tax. Is there an opportunity there? Potentially, but we don't want to hurt home sales in any way. But it's still an opportunity one we could look at. There's also things we could look at in terms of working on our partnerships, growing those partnerships, growing the grants, growing our federal and state grants, and setting a target, a specific target. Let's increase them by 10%, 15%. So those are all different revenue sources that are not taxes that would allow us to increase our revenue streams and be additive to our budget. But then you ask, but why would we do that? You actually have to have a reason why you're trying to create this pool of cash, right? So there needs to be either it's an infrastructure project or there's an operating budget project that requires that kind of funding or financing. As I look to the future, yes, bonds are a good idea for CapEx types of things. The other opportunity that might be on the horizon for us is an infrastructure bank. So there is a Senate bill that's in process now that would allow for the creation of a bank in Washington State that funds infrastructure projects in Washington State. That means you keep the money in Washington State. It's a concept. So what I'm excited about with that one is that's an opportunity for us to borrow money when we need it for big projects when we need to do that. So I think throwing some support behind that could be in our future. But of course, any kind of project we look at, it needs to have a plan. What are the long-term costs? What are we really going to get out of it? And is it going to be everything that we need it to be for ourselves? Generating cash without a real good plan for it, not my thing.
Thank you. And Karen, how? Karen Moran.
Question of raising taxes for road construction is a simple answer, no. I do not back that now, and I would not back it in the immediate future. It is just, we need to go back, we need to look at our budget. In the spring, the city held a get-together of, I don't want to call it a seminar, but they opened up their budget. And what they didn't do is they didn't tell me, departmentalize what was in that budget. So I couldn't see a line item. We need to go through and we need to see what's in every department. Where can we cut? What would that cost mean? We need to go as any business would do. And if you were told we need to cut 10%, you know what, I want to see what that looks like in the budget. I want to see how that affects things. And so that needs to be done, number one. And we need to look at our consultants. Yes, the contract for our attorney is one example. We use many, many consultants in the city, and I am very much back that idea. I think it's a very smart idea, but it is the reason when we have somebody quote that we are only half the amount of some other cities, we only spend half the amount, it's because the contractor fees are not in there. So let's not get that confused. So we need to look at the amounts in their entireties, what it brings in, and the budget's just one way. We need to grow our business community. I would love to see a robust business community because that means dollars to the city. We cannot be building things and be constantly relying solely on property taxes. We need to look at our grants and our partnerships for federal and state and county and look at things such as 202. You know, what if we expanded our boundary north and followed our utility lines? You know what, that would be an excellent idea of where we could put larger businesses that don't belong on 228th because we can't continue to use 228th as a dumping ground. So there's a lot of different things that we can do to look to see, to find the money that we need, and I do not believe that it comes from raising taxes.
All right, thank you. So we have one more question for the 3-minute questions. And this time, Karen Howe, you'll get to go first. Here we go. So smart growth is a term that we have heard quite frequently. What specifically will smart growth look like in your ideal Sammamish, and how will you get us there?
So I look at the concept of smart cities, actually. Smart cities is Internet of Things. That is the opportunity to actually connect your car to the traffic signal, to the car in front of it, to the bus that's in front of it. And by having intelligent devices available to us that are actually able to communicate with each other, that's how we're going to be able to get through intersections safely, quickly, expeditiously. That ain't here yet, but that is something that is very much in the future, and the seeds of it are truly in place now. So if we were to, for example, do a smart city improvement in our traffic intersections, which is one of the best ways to improve traffic anywhere, is to get your intersections to work for you. This is, again, a software update that you'd be able to do just at your laptop and figure out at what point we need to change the signals to get traffic flowing more fluidly, which is not a word. So, but that would be an aspect of it. The other piece of that is cybersecurity, because to be honest with you, the more devices that you have, the more hackable they are. And I have some background in cybersecurity, and so I actually know about this stuff. And there's things that we're probably going to need to do to ensure the cybersecurity or the security of the offices here, the government, but also for our citizens as well. And that's something that we can look at in terms of the smart city aspect. Smart city also should include sustainability. So there's an economic component to that. There's an affordability component to that. There is certainly a framework then for even for the environment and the urban forest development plan that we're talking about. That all connects back into the smart city stuff. So with something that would be smart, for example, for trees and urban development, or the growth plan for the trees, there's software that can tell you what your tree count is and what kind of tree it is. Now, wouldn't that help us as we're looking at development projects to be able to dive down, look at the lot that we're talking about, and decide right there on the spot, these are the trees that are there. If someone tries to take them out or mark them as ones that should be deleted for some reason, say, for development, we can actually intersect there and say, well, no, not at all. And again, that's software, and there's actually one called iTree that's free. So some of this stuff doesn't have to be expensive. So that's a way to look at connecting things so that our traffic moves more quickly and improves our urban forestry plan.
Thank you. And now Karen Moran.
Okay, when I think about smart growth, I do think about smart city and some of the concepts that come from that. I see a coordination of all of our stoplights. I think that the flow of traffic is something that needs to be looked at, and some of it can be fixed by just coordinating our stoplights rather than hitting every single one like I managed to do. Autonomous vehicles are something else I see. I see an urban forest plan that allows us to become a tree city. And I see an array of different multimodal transportation in our city. And I see different environmentally friendly ways of taking care of our surface water and taking care of our groundwater. We've got to take care of both because, you know, it's what keeps us here.
Thank you. So I thought when I first heard the question, you know, I associated with how do you want your community to grow and how do you want your houses to be built? So as everybody knows, you know, the Growth Management Act mandates that every city take in a certain percentage of homes or growth. And what I would like to see in the future is, you know, I come from Klahani, which is a very interesting place if you've never been there. It has a variety of housing in it. We have single homes, we have apartments, we have condos. And I feel like that makes for a wonderful community of people to live. And when I think about smart growth, I think about, you know, how we can have townhomes, how we can have cottage homes, and how they can be connected to transit. How can that be connected to the parks? How can we encourage having these newer developments have more solar panels so that they're generating electricity instead of consuming it? How can we have you know, already installed cisterns which can be used to collect rainwater and harvest that water to water plants? And also, you know, how do we make sure that we are also within these newer developments taking care of our stormwater? Because if we have a runoff, it goes into, you know, our beautiful Lake Sammamish, and it destroys our fish, our local kokanee populations, and even our streams. So how do we create an ecosystem and create a new development environment which blends in with what Sammamish looks right now, where we have an abundance of trees, where we have trails, but then also how are we being more environmentally conscious and how are we being more sustainable? So that is how I see my vision for smart growth.
Thank you very much. Chris?
Okay, we talked a lot about coordination of stoplights, and many times it's very difficult when you have a corridor or a road that has 250 cars for every one car, and so it's one car to the 250. How do you, how much does that one car have to wait? So you got to think about ways to get them into the traffic effectively and keep the flow and the coordination of the stoplights. As far as autonomous vehicles, I can see in a vision of special lanes for the autonomous vehicles that could just literally queue up, boom, 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 and there'd be really no wait. They would automatically be triggered with a mechanism in the car, and they're not too far away from as they get those autonomous vehicles on the road. That'd be the next step, and that would really dramatically improve traffic flow, and that as a method of transport. As far as, and I agree, a lot of this is going to be technology and software, and there's going to definitely be a concern for cybersecurity in all of this planning, and that without it, you can really take our entire transportation grid down very quickly. So that's a big concern of mine, that we need to make sure that's a critical element of any type of smart growth in the Sammamish and other areas.
Thank you. And John Robinson.
Thank you. Yes, I think of technology when I hear of smart growth and smart cities, but I also think of smart growth controlled by the citizens here in the City Council. We need a strong City Council with strong leadership who will control and manage the growth that's facing us today. The perception by most of the citizens that I've spoken to, an analogy is that the tail is wagging the dog here, meaning we have rules for development, but those rules don't seem to be taking place. We get clear cuts, we get frustration because people are thinking that, well, City Council and the city is not controlling development and growth. So when I think of smart growth, I think of leadership, I think of us managing development in the city, and I believe that this can all be done, and I'm certainly not anti-development, but they're going to adjust to whatever the City Council sits down as policy. So we need a strong policy as to what can the developer do within the city. And it's things like setbacks, it's the size of the home on a piece of property, it's the size of the roads in a development. many of the things that I personally see that I don't like, and I hear from other people that they don't like either. We're losing the character of our city and our aesthetics if we let development grow and let it become unmanageable. Meaning, if we let the developer take control of this, we've lost the battle. So how do we regain that? With strong leadership and telling the developers how we're going to run our city. And that takes a strong city council for that to occur. And that takes leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. And Pam.
Thank you. I think that smart growth to me means kind of one thing, and that is that we pace our growth with only what our infrastructure can handle. Simple statement, maybe harder to implement, but I think that's what we really need to focus on. And I couldn't agree with John more that we need leadership. We need people who have the technical expertise, the business and the economic background. I do have 25 years of experience from everything from engineering to management consulting to customer advocacy. So that means that I can help us with understanding the technical details. I also happen to have 3.5 years working in cybersecurity, so I'm glad that that's going to be a big issue. Happy to chip in and help out there. I've worked in management consulting, which means that I know how to work with and organize projects and make sure they stay on track and that we have accountability. And I work in customer advocacy. So I can go out and I can work with our regional partners. I can collaborate. So I think that those are also great things we're going to need because, yeah, we have to make sure that we're pacing our growth with what our infrastructure can handle. I've knocked on over 3,000 doors, so I've talked to probably roughly 1,500 households. And people are concerned. People are concerned about losing our character, and that means that and the traffic and the rampant growth. We need to grow. We need to comply with the Growth Management Act, but we can do it in a more sustainable and a more planful way. And so what we're going to have to focus on is making sure that we, that we have the appropriate staff to be able to oversee all of these codes being implemented, right? So that is part of the problem, right, is that if we don't have enough staff to go out and keep track of what's happening in the developments, we're going to continue to have these areas where they're not compliant. One more thing. I think we need to be data-driven in how we make these decisions as well. So I think it's great that we get feedback from the citizens. I think it's great that we say this is what I like and what I don't like. But I think we need to be really smart about making sure that we're collecting data on what's needed and parsing out what's needed versus what's wanted. So being data-driven is going to be really critical, especially as we start looking towards more technologically savvy solutions. It really is all about our data. And that does come back to, yeah, we're going to need some cybersecurity out there. I guess last, but certainly not least, I think that if we talk about how we can be smart about it and how we can be planful, we really do need to get a little bit more details. We have a comprehensive plan, but I say that it's a little bit more aspirational than operational. It lays out the goals, but I think we need to get very tactical in how we're going to implement some of these projects to reduce the traffic and how we're going to make sure that we improve that sustainability. And I think we can also do a much better job in terms of sustainability with implementing some additional sustainable building goals. And I love some of the ideas that Rituja touched on. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mark.
You should probably make me go first again.
Yeah.
So a couple things. One, in case you don't know this, which it seems maybe people don't know, we have an intelligent traffic management system on most of the lights on 228th that changes the traffic pattern, and the city staff has been working on adjusting it as they go to try to make it work better. My point is that we actually have implemented something that is working and is helping, and it's in an adjustment period, but pay attention. It's making things better on 228th. It may not be perfect, but the city is actually doing that. Okay, second, smart cities and technology. Technology is a great idea. I love my phone. Jason's got a smart watch on over here. This is great stuff, but it doesn't happen reliably. It doesn't come online consistently. You can't depend on it. What we say in my business is hope is not a strategy. We need a strategy for solving these problems. And part of that strategy, and I have not yet been able to find it, I'm really interested, maybe it exists somewhere, is a plan that goes beyond what's in the comp plan. The comprehensive plan says, here's what our city looks like, here's where things are zoned, here's how many houses per acre you can build here, here's the town center, but I don't see anything that says if you build on every piece of property as it's zoned, that's currently a vacant lot that's available and could be built on, so not a sensitive area, how many houses is that going to be? If we do all of that for every piece of property along Issaquah Pine Lake Road, what's going to happen? Are we building that road for that future state? Are we building it for the current state? Are we going to rebuild it in 10 years? We need a better plan. As an engineer, I don't like problems that I don't understand. I don't like to have things that we don't have a strong plan for. When a developer walks in the door with a project that says, I have this 20 acres and I want to build this many houses, our staff should be able to say, yeah, okay, there's that one. We knew when that happened, this was generally what would happen with the traffic. These are the impacts that are likely to occur. We've planned for that. Not, oh, wow, that's a surprise. We're going to react and we're going to try to figure it out and run around and scratch our heads. I believe that we can do this. We have detailed, granular plans for open space, to plan for parks, and that's great. We need the same level of detail and understanding what the full build-out capacity, including town center, of Sammamish is. And when the Growth Management Act comes and tells us, I went to trip on that one, you have to absorb this many homes. They don't do it by the percentage. They give you a number. We need to understand how far can we go, how many homes can we build, what's that going to look like, because that number is not going to go down. They're going to raise it every so often, and we need to have a plan for our city that says we understand that, we're managing it, we're in control, we're not reacting, we are being proactive about what's going to happen in our city. That kind of a plan will make growth smart in the city of Sammamish, whatever happens with technology.
Thank you. And Jason.
Thanks. So back to the original question. So smart growth. So to me, when I think about why I live here, the things that are important to me, it's about making sure that whatever investments we make as a community, whatever developments, roads, whatever goes on here, that we're conscious of the impact on the environment. In my mind, at least, that's first and foremost. What are we doing to our lakes and streams, our air, our open spaces? And in as much as we can keep that front of mind, and as much as we can make sure we're thinking of those things first going forward, technological advances, wonderful. I mean, the comp plan, I'm on board. We're doing it. But I want to make sure that we're not overdeveloping. There's nothing wrong with Bellevue, but Sammamish should not become Bellevue. We can't just build every single lot that can be built, doesn't need a house. Let's leave some spaces alone. To me, that is smart growth. It's about recognizing that when we have a city like Sammamish, it's a special place. We're not connected to any highways. We're not connected to, people won't come up here unless they really want to or need to. I love that. So I want to keep it that way. I want to make sure we're respectful of the nature and the environment and our lake and our streams, that we're not building over those or building so close to them that we're impacting them. I mean, we get bears in my backyard in Klahani. That's awesome. Freaks my kids out, but that's awesome, right? I want to make sure that we come up right against the urban growth boundary, right? We're the edge. Sammamish is the edge of this urban growth boundary. So yeah, we're going to absorb some growth. We have to be cognizant of the kind of growth we're going to have. But to me, smart growth is a reflection of the kind of reasons we choose to live here. And to me, that's protecting our environmental heritage, so that when my kids bring their kids to their grandparents' house someday, there's still bears in the backyard occasionally, and it's still there. And we're not growing beyond what we want it to be now, which is an interconnected, beautiful community that is right in the middle of a beautiful Pacific Northwest environment. So that, to me, is what smart growth means to me.
Thank you. So now we're going to be switching to the lightning round, so answers will be 1 minute each. John Robinson, you'll get to go first with your answer this time, and we'll continue the circle from there. So here's the question. What changes, if any, would you make to the city's tree retention policy, and why?
Okay, excellent question. There's a number of proposals out there to change the tree retention program. I'm hearing 35%, 25%, et cetera. The bottom line is it's not being enforced. So we need a program that enforces the program for tree retention. If it's 35%, it should be that and should be enforced by the city if feasible, meaning does a lot have 35% trees on it? Secondly, I think a plant a tree program would be very helpful here, and specifically planting evergreen trees, not deciduous trees. Evergreen trees are a habitat for a lot of the animals in the environment, and it supports our green emerald city that we're developing here. So tree retention is important. 35% is a number that I've heard, but a plant-a-tree program is vitally important also.
Thank you. Pam?
Great, thank you. Yeah, so our tree retention policy is currently 35%. I'm not sure that I would alter that number right now. The city is currently conducting or has contracted for studies, right? So we just have a new urban forestry management plan. We've got some studies underway, and I would like to, again, be data-driven. I'd like to let the experts come back and tell us what we need, and then council can review those study results and make some determinations and implement some policy there. Now, some ideas of what we could do is we could add some additional rules for clustering, adding buffers between the neighborhoods and the roads, and also require our developers to do the tree replacement themselves. So we can have some plant-a-tree programs, but wouldn't it be great if we actually made the developers do that and absorb the cost for that to replace all of the trees that they cut down?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mark?
So tree retention, you asked about specifically. I would not change the current year-old, 2-year-old, 35% requirement. That's for R4 and more dense lots. It's a different requirement for R1. It's actually 50%. I think the problem is that we need to understand, you know, when I look at Highcroft, I have a hard time envisioning how that complied with the old standard, which was 25%. It's tough for people to understand how it's being enforced and what variances are being given on these developments. So either they're in compliance and we don't understand it and we need to do a better job of communicating, or they're not in compliance and the city council needs to step in and stop the variances that are being granted to some of these developments. So we have a good policy. We need to give it a chance to work, and we need to enforce both the spirit and the letter of that ordinance.
Thank you. Jason?
Well, more trees, please. That's where I come from. I think if we want to throttle or slow down development and growth, have the city council move forward on making it higher trees per lot. That'll slow things down a little bit. If we're serious about it, that's what it means. We can put in more trees per lot, less houses. That sounds fine to me. That's something that the city council can do. It makes sense to me. I think that I talk about it every day. I go down, right down on this Pine Lake Road, and I look out on what used to be Connor Jarvis Farm. It was there one day and gone the next. And I didn't really even know until it was gone. It's just something your eyes get accustomed to every day, and then bam, all the trees are gone, and there's huge development, huge $125 million homes. Awesome if you're the Connor or the Jarvis family, right? But you know, it was a shock to the eyes, right? And good for them. That's property rights, right on. But, you know, more trees.
Karen?
Okay, so yes, I want to keep the existing plan that we have, which is a good plan at 35% and 50% depending on how the property is actually zoned. The other piece of this is being able to encourage trees on private land as well as public land is a good policy. It's always great to have it on public land because for people that are in condos or apartments, they need access to the trees. And siting trees, for example, into neighborhoods is not equitable, frankly, for them. So having actually a plan for increasing trees on private lands is a great idea. As a matter of fact, Seattle Trees for Neighborhoods project has helped plant over 7,300 trees in 8 years. The trees are free. It's a very inexpensive program. They give you advice on what kind of trees to plant, and they teach you on how to keep them alive. And for people like me who are not gifted in that area, it's a requirement.
Thank you. And Karen Moran?
Well, I would keep the 35% existing that we've been talking about. And I look to the urban forestry plan to be helping choose the trees that we plant and to help people like Karen who are not able to keep them alive. But the other part of this is that we need to enforce our tree retention. We need to stop giving out variances to developers, and we need to hold them accountable for what is taken down. We need to plant annual trees, and I think that we should start a program with that. There are many tree services that hand out the little saplings that are free, and I think we need to be doing that on an annual basis. And we need to also, when we're looking at the trees, and I'm hoping this comes back from the urban forestry plan, is one of the biggest problems we have in the city is surface water. And as we take down those trees, we're getting rid of those trees that absorb the water. And so I would like to have a special look at the trees that are more, oops, I'm told to stop.
Thank you. Lightning fast.
I know.
Right? Rituja.
Yep. So absolutely more trees, and I would not want to reduce the percentage. In fact, I want us to aspire to a higher percentage on an overall tree canopy in the city. You know, one of the vision statements that we talk about and this is in the vision statement of Sammamish, is that we pride ourselves in being in a well-preserved natural environment, and we pride ourselves in expanding our tree canopy. So I would definitely want us to live up to our vision. The other suggestions that I have is we should hire an arborist on our city, so that who can help us with trees and tree health, because that is very important. And then also, I would like the arborists to help different neighborhoods plant appropriate trees. Too often we find trees that are not appropriate for the neighborhoods. They fall down, get diseased. And again, I would like us to again focus back on the urban forest plan, because that will look at the overall tree health and maintenance of Sammamish and not just individual plots of land.
Thank you. And Chris.
Yeah, the percentage really doesn't matter when you're reducing the tree canopies. 35%, that means you're reducing the tree canopy 65%. So we definitely need a replanting program. We need to focus on trees like conifers that are durable, that are low cost, so we don't have to replace them and increase cost of maintenance for them. And finally, we really need to work closely with the citizens, the commissions, and the contractors, developers on the urban forest management plan, because I really think there has to be a landscape design component in our development, and something that we lack. That's what we see is clear cutting and variances going on.
All right, thank you. So for our next question, Pam, we'll start with you, and then we'll go that way, right to left. Okay, so this is also 1 minute. What is a specific gap in services provided by the city that you would like to see addressed, and how would you approach meeting this need?
Well, one of the things that the city's currently doing a study on is health and human services, right? So we have no services within the city of Sammamish for that. So if you think of senior services, you think of people with special needs, we don't have any of those services within our city. What I'd like to see is that gap analysis, or that study's being done in terms of needs, and I'd like to see us as a council take in those needs and then have the political will to go and act on them, right? This is where we need to be able to step up and meet the needs of our citizens. But again, I'd like to see us be data-driven. I'd like to see us see what needs are out there, what are not being met, and find the most effective way to meet the needs of our citizens for those services. And most likely transportation will be a component of that, but that's what I'd like to see us do.
Thank you. And John.
The gap I see in services are affordable housing and senior housing, of which I'm going to be in very soon. If it goes on like this. But it's seriously, it's a real issue facing us. How do we provide more affordable housing? The vision I have is at the town center, and working with developers again is a way in which we can control and maximize the amount of affordable housing that we require in the town center. We can do things such as density grants and land swaps with developers to try and increase this. That applies also to affordable housing and senior housing. We could also take a look at ADUs, ancillary development units, for quarter-acre lots with a building that would be less than 1,000 square feet to add additional space for those that need the help.
Thank you. Chris.
I look at the numerous consultants that address our traffic, and every time we are up till 1 a.m., I'm wondering what the billable hours are. we need to not hire as many people as the consultants, but find one person highly qualified that knows traffic that we could be on our fixed overhead, which will reduce the reliance on consulting. That would reduce our costs. We'd have an in-house go-to person that would help coordinate our traffic needs. I think it's critical.
So for me, where I see one of the bigger gaps is, again, the health and human services. Right now, we have a huge young population in our city, and, there are there's stress, there's temptations, there's also drug use, addiction, and we do not have a service within our city to address that. We do not have any services to help address, within the city for mental health issues. So I would really like the Health and Human Services Committee or Commission to work on that. The other things that I would like us to address is having a citizen or a resident academy where citizens are educated on how the city works, because I think that makes it welcoming and it educates people on how cities work and how it functions. Also, I would like to see a cultural center. We have a huge diverse community here in Sammamish, and we do not have one place to gather or celebrate. So I would like to see those things in the city.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Karen.
To fill in the gap, there's a few things. I think the Health and Services Committee will be, they're due to have some information that's supposed to be in by the end of the year. But some of the obvious ones to our community would be the lack of things for our seniors. I am a big supporter and help with Eastside Friends of Seniors, and there's just nothing in our community to help our seniors. Then we've got the junior high students, where the one program that we did have that was for kids after school at the Boys and Girls Club became in question to start the school year. We have affordable housing needs that are not being met. The affordable housing could be met with different incentives to developers, could be added with ADUs, but those are some of the very obvious gaps that are there.
Thank you. Karen Howe.
So I'm going to talk about something that's a little bit different. One of the gaps I see is that the way that our neighborhoods are constructed, they are isolating in and of themselves, because we have cul-de-sacs, which used to be best practice, and by the way, isn't any longer. We don't know our neighbors don't know us. I look at a gap in connectedness, and I would love to figure out a better way to do it. Right now, the city has 67 events over the course of a year. That's a lot of events. I'd like to figure out if there's other opportunities for us to get to know each other differently and more deeply and frankly more genuinely, because there's so much we can learn from each other. I would like to close the gap in connectedness with my neighbors and with neighboring communities and pull us together as a city of Sammamish.
Thank you. Jason.
Yeah, for me, it's workforce housing and opportunities for seniors to stay in Sammamish when your home doesn't work for you anymore. I happen to be, that's what I do for a living, is work for folks that have physical challenges and modify homes for people with physical challenges. And trying to modify a home is expensive, and trying to move to a place that is single level, ground floor, maybe an elevator, within Sammamish, there are not that many options, and I'd like to stay here till I'm done. That'd be cool. So I think that that'd be a great investment for our community. Additionally, and I know you asked for one, but I'll give you two because I have 30 seconds. Senior housing, workforce housing, you have folks that are like working at the Metropolitan Market or working at the Safeway or the Albertsons, or, wherever we go, the Rite Aid, we have the Bartels. I'm thinking of the folks that I've met. They don't live here unless they're living with mom and dad. It's hard to get rent to be able to live here, and those jobs don't pay to live here, so we need to make housing that fits those jobs.
Thank you. And Mark.
So my semi-humorous first answer is, can we get an Ace Hardware back? I do think that from my experience at our church, there is a big gap with seniors in the community and folks that they've figured out housing in many instances, and I'm not sure that we can socially engineer a way for every senior citizen to have a house in Sammamish, but if we can create more programs, because a lot of them have time in the day, they're looking to get connected with their peers, they're looking to have programs of things that they can do, I think that's a place where we could get a lot of bang for our buck. I do say, when I hear the word services, it makes me a little cautious about the budget, but I do think if we pick things where we can help a lot of people get connected into the community, increase the texture and fabric of our community, community, then that's probably worth the investment, and we can get that bang for the buck investment in trying to provide programs for our seniors.
Thank you. All right, so the last question of this lightning round, and then we'll go to the audience submitted questions. This time we're going to start with Chris and go to the left. So Chris, and then everyone else. What are your plans to increase and enhance civic engagement in Sammamish?
Okay, I think it's really critical. We have a lot of cultural events in the city, and my observation, it's concentrated with that culture itself. We got to diversify these cultural events and get a broader appeal to attend other events that are not your culture. We have to learn about each other's culture. The only way we're going to fully be a diverse community is to understand other cultures. My marriage to a Shanghainese wife has taught me a lot about diversity, and that they effectively silo themselves and don't reach out. We need to reach out and bring them together. So it's very critical that we reach out and push that incentive to get us together.
Thank you. Rituja.
So, since I've come here to Sammamish, I've always been part of the community, be it either as a PTSA mom or a soccer coach. And, I have sometimes been the first person from my community to join those groups. And I found it to be extremely welcoming. I think we just need to keep providing these opportunities. I know recently, Platopians for Peace has started here, and that has brought in another different group of people together. We have communities, we just need to engage more in them. I think we find these different interests which bind us together, and I think right now people are very engaged civically, and like I've been door knocking, and people are very interested in what's happening in our city. So just making sure that we do feel welcome into the community, and I find Sammamish to be a very welcoming place. So I feel people are more than ready to engage civically here as well.
Thank you. Karen Moran.
Well, the first thing I would say on how to engage in civic engagement would be public outreach. And that could be as simple as a monthly newsletter to, I would love to see, and I'm looking at all of our council members in the audience, I would like to say a weekend of the month of the mayor, where they go out and doorbell and actually hear what their neighbors and their residents have to say. And Sammamish has a wonderful, diverse community, and we are doing it right. We are getting along well. We function well. We need to encourage these things by events at City Hall and different fairs, community fairs, and we're on the right track. We just need to continue.
Right. Thank you. Karen Howe.
In terms of civic engagement, you are engaged because you are here. And the people that'll be watching this later, they're engaged. They're participating. What I see is there's an uptick, I think, in civic engagement by all kinds of people. And I think we could do a great job, frankly, of going into the high schools and encouraging those kids to get involved. Because I got to tell you, the kids that are, helping me with the groceries or whatever, I tell them what I'm doing, and they get excited, and they actually want to help me. And I drug out a couple of kids with me last weekend, and they'll never be back. But my point is that when you are excited about what you're doing with your civic engagement, you will pull people into your slipstream. You can do this. It isn't just on the city council to do it. You have got to do it as well, and be that mentor and be that coach to bring people along in the process.
Thank you. Jason.
Thanks. So for me, civic engagement, obviously that's what we're doing right here, right? We have an election coming up, but more important than all that is just being connected with the community and making sure that, at least for me, I follow what goes on in Sammamish before I got involved in all the city council stuff. I wanted to know what was going on. And there's text alerts, there's emails, there's Channel 21. This is a very welcoming Commons in City Hall, and it's been in other cities. It's not the same. This is a beautiful city and a beautiful city hall in the Commons, and there's always something going on the Commons, it seems like, whether it's art fair or just, there's always something happening. And I think that the opportunities are there if people want to get engaged. I think that the city does a great job of reaching out and letting people know things are happening. And if you're looking for something to do, there's always something to do in Sammamish, and I think that's pretty cool. I'm glad I'm glad that we have those opportunities. A lot of cities don't have that, and we're lucky.
Thank you. And Mark.
When I think about civic engagement, I particularly think of if you come to the city council meetings, you'll be one of the passionate few, sometimes the passionate two, that's sitting out in those chairs. And I think that's kind of unfortunate, but I do think it's a reflection of the fact that most people live their lives. They love Sammamish. They are happy generally with what's going on. They're unhappy with a few specific things about traffic and the trees, but they're not particularly engaged because they enjoy the community that they live in. We do a lot of great things. I would actually say that I believe that the city does not have a strong, cohesive plan for Facebook, Twitter communication, social media. There's some people, I think, within the staff that have fought that, and I think with a more concise, developed, thought-out plan, we could allow people to know more about what's going on, because sometimes that's the barrier. They just don't necessarily know what's on the calendar.
Thank you. And Pam.
Great, thanks. I think we can do a couple of things. One, I think we could actually create some positions working with the council and reach out to groups to specifically fill those, right? So really do a more targeted outreach to say, hey, we want you to come. We want you to come to council, present your concerns, present your ideas, and get to know each other more. And I think that takes us more actively reaching out with specific invitations. I think we need to do a better job of reaching people where they are. So social media is one thing. Not everyone is on social media, and not everyone wants to use social media in those ways. So what about reaching out through other channels like PTSA, neighborhood groups, your HOAs, right? So I think reaching people where they already are will help to make sure that they have that awareness. And I do think that the roundtables are a great idea. I know they're not always well attended, and I think we need to continue to host those and do a better job of getting folks to show up there.
Cool. Thank you. And John.
When I think of civic engagement, I think of people listening. And we have a wonderful, welcoming environment here. I've got neighbors from Finland, I have neighbors from China, et cetera, and they want to be heard. And so if I'm successful and I get on city council, I would propose that each council member go to the neighborhoods on a quarterly basis as an informal meeting just to listen and hear what the citizens have to say. It can be very intimidating in this chamber sessions here for people to come here and really voice what their concerns are for the city. So when I think of civic engagement, I think of listening and hearing.
Thank you. So now we're going to be moving to questions from the audience. I have some that have been selected here. This time we're going to start with Karen Moran, and we'll continue going that way to the left. So here's the question. Okay, just making sure everybody is okay. Okay, we're good. Okay. Many of you have said that going to court is not a good way to handle East Lake Sammamish Trail issues. How would you distinguish your approach from the other candidates?
Well, the portion that's left on the East Lake Sammamish Trail is an issue that's in court, so there's really not a way to avoid that. It's in the federal courts and in the state courts. I wish, if it were in my perfect world, that I would get King County's tail back to the table and the residents down there and come up with a resolution. It doesn't work for anybody to sit in the courts for years. It's expensive and it's frustrating for those landowners. So if it were in the perfect world, I would like to see what the city had previously done, which is bring everybody back to the table and come up with a positive solution.
Thank you. And Karen Howe.
So I'm a CASA. I'm a court-appointed advocate for abused and neglected kids in the court system, and we use mediation. And in this particular case, we already know the outcome. The outcome is there will be a trail. We can all agree there will be a trail. So we're here today. This is where we're going to be. And in mediation, you just work it through, right? You just compromise, you get it done, you mediate, you remediate where you need to, but you get the project done. Because we all agree you're gonna have a trail. It's how you get there and whose toes you're going to have to step on in order to get it done. We could get it done a lot better. And frankly, in family court, we have a solution that works well and gets families reunited back with their kids.
Thank you. Jason.
I think I saw Gene Morrell walk in at some point. I don't know. We had a very interesting meeting at his home with the folks that are fully invested, proximate to the East Lake Sammamish Trail issue along the pathway. I agree it's going to be built. I think the interesting thing for me is everyone's got a different perspective as to what's going down there. And it's really amazing. You speak to the homeowners, it's a really straightforward process for them. They just don't want the trail built through their living rooms, and the property rights, the zoning, the way the railway was built, it's a mess. And King County's really dropped the ball. And I agree we don't need to go to court. We're in court. That's what courts are supposed to do. I hope we have an easy solution that doesn't require too much in attorney's fees, and I think the trail's going to get built sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Mark.
I've spent 27 years in the commercial construction industry managing all kinds of projects, including a big $500 million project right in the middle of a residential neighborhood in Everett. It drives me crazy to hear the stories about how the contractor is only going to let me do this and the King County is going to build a fence here. We have two sides that have spent 10 years arguing. They can't seem to get together. I've spent 27 years having to do this every day as part of my job. I would love the opportunity to sit down with the right people on both sides, because many of these concerns, the concerns that are in the court have to do with property rights, but the concerns about how the trail gets built, providing access for people to their own property down next to the lake, to their own boat in the summertime when they want to use it, those can be dealt with in person around a table. I've done it before. I'd love to try again.
Thank you. All right, Pam.
I would differentiate my approach from the other candidates in that I have already started working on this issue. We did meet with some of the homeowners. I reached out and have had a meeting with Washington Bikes, and I'm in the process of reaching out to King County to try to see if we can't get people to come back to the table and work through the settlements so that we can, in fact, pave the trail that is already there, and make sure that we can work this out without having to go to court and without having to spend thousands and thousands of taxpayer dollars paying for both sets of attorney fees and all the court costs, because it's our tax dollars paying for both sides. So that's how I differentiate it, is that I've already started working on it. So thanks.
Thank you very much. And John.
First of all, I think it's outrageous what King County is trying to do to some of the homeowners on the lakefront. It's almost a predatory approach to control property. And my question is, where is the city of Sammamish? We talked about spending all this money on an attorney. Is there a way for our attorney to step up, for the city to step up and help defend these folks, either through mediation so we get a beneficial outcome for both parties? It's a very clear-cut decision there.
Thank you. Chris.
I, too, met with several homeowners on the lake, and this is just unbelievable what the county is doing. They're bullying these homeowners, and they claim they have the right to do it, but what about their moral right? And we're paying the taxes for the government, and they're attacking the citizens who they represent. So it upsets me deeply with what is going on here. We should be working together. We're not. We're in court. There's perfect opportunities for flexibility. These homeowners are giving up so much concessions to settle, and giving up so much of their property to settle, and still the county's unwilling to even budge in helping them reach a conclusion so they can live a peaceful life.
Rituja.
I don't think going to court, like Pam said, we're paying from both sides, King County and Sammamish. I think the best way would be to mediate and probably come to a settlement where the homeowners are satisfied with the concessions that they're granted. I mean, it is really, really tragic to just imagine somebody going through your a living room or through your garage door, not having access to the door. So I can't even imagine what the homeowners are going through. But I also understand that it's important that, the trail is being built for public use, and that is how it will be built. But yes, let's get to a resolution where we solve this problem quickly.
Thank you. All right, so for our next question from the audience, we're going to start with you, Jason Ritchie. And here it is. Would you support a dedicated senior center such as the one in Redmond? Please explain your reasoning.
That's an easy yes, for sure. I think it's absolutely something we should invest in as a city. Is it going to cost money? Yes. Is it something that we should invest our money into? Yes. I think that we are rapidly we're losing an opportunity. Let's put it that way. There's an institutional knowledge, and we had 4 people, the mayor and I were speaking about this. We're losing people that are living here that have been invested in this community for a long time because they can't afford to stay here. They have nothing to do here. And I think it's a really important thing that we recognize that we are a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-aged community too, if we're going to be the kind of community that we want to be. So giving seniors a place to go, to hang out, to do, to play, to gather is incredibly important. I think it's the kind of thing a city council should do, and it's the kind of thing our city needs.
Thank you. Mark?
I would support the idea. I would say I'm not a fan of doing more studies because we seem to choke ourselves on studies and consultants. But this is an instance where if we don't understand what's needed, we could spend money and build something that's not used. The Teen Center highlighted some of those issues. And if we're going to take on the responsibility of creating something for such an important part of our community, we better understand the issues that go with it. What will they need? What do they want? What will they use? What's the transportation strategy for them to get there, to get back? What's the time of day? All of those sorts of things need to be well understood so that when we're investing dollars in our community, we're doing it wisely and we're doing it in a way that actually provides benefit to the people that we're trying to work for.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Pam?
Well, I definitely support making sure we have a senior center of some sort. And the only reason I say I'm not 100% in favor of a dedicated senior center is that there have been so many studies done that say that when you create environments where you bring together your seniors and your youth, that you get benefits all around. So there have been studies done that say like we should have sort of multi-age campuses where you can have different school ages plus your senior center together, because you can get your high school students who need community service hours to very easily and conveniently go and help out at the senior center. So I'm absolutely in favor of a senior center. Calling it dedicated is where I kind of hesitate, because I want to make sure that we develop a senior center with all the services that our seniors need. But I think we can do it in a way that brings us back to that connectedness, and that we can pull more of our youth and our seniors together in a really positive way for our community.
Thank you very much. And John?
I think if this night goes on much longer, I'll be in the senior center. But I don't like to put labels on places such as a senior center. I'm thinking of a multi-use facilities within the city. Now, the key to that is how do we get people to these places? And I would believe that and support that we have an intra-city transportation bus system that moves people around so we can get to these different sites. So I don't believe that we need a physical dedicated place, but I would certainly support a multi-use, different ages, and different sites that could support this.
Thank you. Chris?
Decisions like this are exactly why you need long-term planning and a vision for your city. We can't just fund the next great idea. Looking at the aquatic and community center, a lot of people like it, a lot of people don't like it. It may have been ill-conceived if we could have made a combined center that's accessible to Sammamish residents, but many people out of Sammamish are paying the user fees to use it. So is it truly a community center? That's a question. So we got to be very careful about our investments and about making the long-term plan, do the needs assessment, and I really think we're pushing seniors out of the city due to cost alone, and I'm very concerned about that. So I think it's something that I would definitely look at very seriously, because we've got to take care of our seniors.
Thank you.
Important demographic.
Oh, sorry. Rituja.
Yeah. I'm very much in support of having senior programming for seniors, which the city can do and some other organizations around here can do. The CWU campus is coming along, the Central Washington University. They are going to have more programs for seniors. We can have, when I was on the Arts Commission, there was a program done where the students from high school actually interviewed seniors who were living in the retirement homes, and that became a project. And, so we need to increase our programming where we can keep our seniors engaged in our community and keep them vibrant. They're huge learners. I find get great satisfaction in learning from them, so I can sit hours together, just sitting and chatting with them. But yes, we need to have more programming for our seniors. Again, I don't think they would want to be isolated just in one center, but let's have more programming in different parts of the city. And just as an FYI, IAWW, the Indian Association of Western Washington, is starting programming for seniors in the Teen Center from Monday onwards, or from today. Yeah.
Thank you. Karen Moran.
I think the seniors in our community are probably one of the most underserved of all of the people in our community. So I would support a center. I would like to see a multi-age center with a very strong senior program. I do believe that having programs for all the different ages, I think is great. I do see that when you see the youth from the high schools working with their senior citizens, I think both sides gain from that. So I would support a center that is built. I'm not sure if I would go dedicated, because I would like to see a multi-age center, but I would like to see a very strong senior program, because I do think that we are very far behind in services for them.
Thank you. And Karen Howe.
So if we were able to use a center, for example, like the Boys and Girls Club during the day, and have that be a place where we could make have different kinds of programs, that would be a way to use existing infrastructure. And I guess everyone else has had really awesome ideas, and damn you, Pam, you said exactly what I was going to say. But I meant that in a good way. I think the other piece of this is that seniors can continue to give back to us. And so in addition to, having classes for them, why can't they teach? So how about at Central Washington University, which of course I've never talked to them, I don't know if they'd even do this, but what if they did, where they could actually contribute back to us, teach that class in environmental studies, teach that class in auto mechanics, I don't care what it is, Tai Chi, whatever. There's expertise and knowledge there that, why would we want to lose that when we have access to it right here at our doorstep?
Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to continue with right to left for a little bit. Pam, you get to go first again. Here is the next question. We need options for startup businesses here in Sammamish. Some Sammamish entrepreneurs who have recently been renting space, or have recently been renting space at Impact Hub in Bellevue, and they've had to leave to accommodate light rail. What would it take for our city to bring Impact Hub here? Impact Hub equals less traffic.
I'm sorry, did you say I start with that?
Yeah, you start. Go ahead.
Well, so we talk a lot about attracting business to the city. One of the things the council could do is to allocate resources to make sure that we can help out with that. One of the biggest challenges that our businesses have in the city of Sammamish is the cost of our commercial real estate, right? So one, we need to diversify our commercial real estate providers so that we can get a little competition going. We have a near monopoly on our commercial real estate, and so we need to bring the prices down. In the interim, we could allocate space and invite these groups to come and be here. And yes, it would be great to have a place where small businesses, startups can have their drop-down places and collaborate and keep some of that traffic on the plateau in the mornings.
John.
I have experience. I started a business from the ground up, and when I think back about the challenges that were being faced at that time, it was little assistance from a city to help. There were taxes, there were all these paperwork that had to be filled out. So what I envision is that the city give a helping hand. Now, we've done something I think that's very positive, and we have a small business portal on our website, which I think is vastly important and helpful to a startup. But we need to provide the tools that they need, and I mentioned it earlier. We need a reliable internet for the city, and I think our city can step up and help with that, because that's a vital tool today for the success of any city. We could also take a look at incubator buildings where small businesses come in and they grow from there. This could be a partnership, what we call a P3, or a public-private partnership.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, Pam hit on an important point, is that the near monopoly on commercial real estate is creating a cost prohibitive problem for many of the businesses trying to come into Sammamish. And so I talked a little about taxes. Let's not add on to that problem. Advertising, like John mentioned, is important to attract the business, but there's got to be some options and areas for the businesses to put themselves into a competitive situation. And I don't know how it compares to Bellevue, but we need to bring them into the table and talk to them and figure out ways to encourage them and get our Chamber of Commerce engaged and so on, because we really do need them in our community, and we got to help them be successful. It's not a lot we can do as a city, but there's a lot we can do through our network in this community.
Thank you. Ratuja?
So, it's not just the home-owned businesses here, it's also many of the nonprofits and community groups that gather. They also need places to meet. So it's not just about one entity. And the way I think the city can help out, the city also has some publicly owned properties, and maybe they could lease them out for a certain period of time, provide with internet, phones, computers. We can be very resourceful. I think another idea would be also to work with developers and trying to see if as part of development, if they could set aside certain areas or certain rooms in their newer developments for people to meet together.
Thank you. Karen Moran?
I think one of the easiest things that we could do is to attract businesses is by using, we've got the town center coming in, which is labeled with mixed usage. And so if we take full advantage of what that actually means and build, one of the things that happens, it's happening down in Issaquah, happened in Redmond, is that you see some of that mixed usage be filled with residential. But if we actually want this and we dedicate ourselves to we want businesses, then we take full advantage of what the mixed usage area in our city is and make sure that businesses do go in there, because the more area we have for businesses, the more the rent will be able to come down. We should engage our chambers, and we should be able to possibly utilize the public spaces we have. We have public buildings. We should be utilizing that space to try to help businesses and until they can grow and get into the space that would be utilized in mixed usage.
Thank you. Karen?
I've done a ton of startups. I mean a ton. And you start with nothing, right? And so what you do need actually is if I had access to a conference room where I could shut the freaking door and do a video conference. If I had that, that would actually be a big leg up in actually being able to start a company and being able to get my workforce, who by the way lives in the neighborhood but scattered all over the plateau, we could meet, do our stuff, break, go back to work at our desks. So that, just a simple investment like that makes a big difference. It gets a kickstart going. The other thing is what if you had kind of a LinkedIn for Sammamish? Like a LinkedIn that was just, here are the tech workers that know agile programming, whatever, something. Okay. Or new customer service, or new marketing, or new biz dev. So if you had your own LinkedIn, you could leverage that.
Thank you. Jason?
I love the idea of LinkedIn Sammamish. That sounds awesome. I think that one of the reasons why I wanted to, be involved in the city council in the beginning is I'm a small business owner, and I run my business out of my home. And to me, that is 2 kids, summertime. That's not fun. Right? To me, a business incubator / a place where home-based businesses can go, and I'll pay rent. That to me is a good thing for the city council to invest into. Where can it go? I'm hearing great ideas. I don't know. I mean, I think we really need to figure out where it can go, but is this the kind of thing that the city council could do? That's why I want to get involved, is to figure out how the next Microsoft or the next Oracle comes out of Sammamish, comes out of a garage in Sammamish and grows and, turns into a huge multi-billion-dollar business based out of Sammamish. That would be great.
Thank you. And Mark?
So two ideas. One, I think when you're trying to start a business, one of the challenges is just knowing what you have to do. How do you get a business license? Who can you connect to? I think the city could create that category and make it an easier process, a smoother, simpler process for somebody that wants to start a business. The other thing is, if we're going to build a town center and have commercial space there, we require that developers and builders create residential affordable space within the context of what they're building. I think we could easily create some kind of commercial affordable space that's designated, and we have to try it and change it as we go along, but it's designated for small business as an incubator. I think that that's a real opportunity to get people together as well in one space, and wouldn't really be a big impact to the city or the city's finances. There wouldn't be a lot of management, but it would create a space where a lot of the things that have been described could happen, and it puts the burden on the developers and those who are growing the city center.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have time for at least one more question. Yeah, we did the math the same, looks like. Here we go. So here will be our last question of the night. Rituja, we'll start with you, and this time we'll go from left to right. So we'll end with Karen Moran, but start with Rituja. Okay. There are many council and regional committees to serve on. What committee would you desire to be on, and why? And if you could be on any council and regional committee, which, okay, that was rewrite, got it. Thank you. So you got the question. Go ahead.
Oh, so the two regional committees that I would like to be on is, first would be something that deals with health and human services, and making sure that our residents are served well in those areas, especially, like I said, if we have mental health, domestic violence, addiction, stress, those kind of, the east side, I think health services provides that, so I would like to be involved with that. And then secondly, the transportation. I think transit and transportation, I'm very passionate about that. I would like Sammamish to have more transit options, and I would like to be on those committees.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, definitely regional transportation. I really would be excited to get involved with that, because it relies on a lot of engagement with different leaders and communities and trying to bring some real solutions rather than just a think tank, but executing on solutions. I would really enjoy that.
John?
I mentioned at the last forum that this is really a full-time job. Now, I've got the luxury of being retired, so I've got a lot of time. But I would create my own committee, and I would call it the Advocacy Committee. I would go out and I would sell Sammamish. And the reason I would do that is because it has to intertwine with transportation, with growing business, with human services, all the aspects of our life. And right now, I saw that we fell off of the top 100 most desirable cities to live in. We've got to get back into that top 10. And that's how I would do it, with an advocacy committee that I would create myself on City Council.
Thank you. Pam?
Yeah, it sounds like we might have too many people on the transit committee, but I don't know. Traffic's a big problem. Maybe there's room for all of us. But for me, the two big ones would be transportation and affordable housing. And the transportation one, there are already, there's not only the committee here, but there are many regional groups already in existence. And I think being able to leverage the relationships with those groups and being able to work with those groups, because as we've discussed, not as much tonight as we did last time, but our transportation is not just a Sammamish problem, it's a regional issue. And so being able to be plugged into that and be part of those regional solutions, making sure that we are getting our fair share from Sound Transit, from King County, and from Metro, I think are going to be really critical. And so I would love to be able to put my skills in terms of technical acumen as well as advocacy to work by plugging into those groups and making sure we can get what Sammamish needs.
Thank you. And Mark?
So I'd like to sit on the committee that oversees Sound Transit, how they spend their money, how they decide what taxes they're going to collect, and how they decide what projects they're going to do, because I think we need somebody who advocates on behalf of people outside of the city of Seattle for what Sound Transit should be doing for communities like Sammamish. Then the other one that I would love to, just for a personal interest, be involved in is the renewable energy in the Seattle area. I'm amazed at how this building right here is not covered with solar panels, that we're not pursuing some of those things to make our communities more independent of some of the things that are going outside of our communities. I think that's a fascinating thing and really an area that's not received much attention at all within the city of Sammamish. And it'd be fun to talk to the community and figure out how to implement some of those ideas here.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah. Essentially, there's an organization called the Sound Cities Association. Because of where we live, we have to, if we're going to deal with transportation, these other issues, and everyone knows transportation is the biggest concern we're all going to hear. Unless we're talking to the other cities in our region, Issaquah, Redmond, King County, as part of the Sound Cities Association, and that's 39 cities, not counting Seattle, it's everybody else in the Puget Sound area. That's how we're going to create those relationships to let our city have a seat at the table when that money is divvied out, like with ST3. So to me, having an active voice on the Sound Cities Association is incredibly important. And I agree with Pam. The housing situation, anything, just given my background in housing and building, I would love to be part of creating affordable, accessible housing in our community and figuring out how we can work with local vendors and local builders to try to create those opportunities for our citizens.
Thank you. And Karen, how?
And so for me, it would be definitely working on regional transit. That to me is such a big deal. I just couldn't walk away. And for me personally, it would be Parks and Rec, because that's where the action is. I want to figure out how to get funding for 60 more acres. And I would love to do that. So I'd also like to see that the commissions that we have here are actually like staff for council members, that they do the deep dive, they do the heavy lifting, they do the deep intellectual dig into the data, and that the council is able to interrogate that data and to really get answers faster. Because to have them study something and then to have the council study something, you can actually duplicate your time. But what a great shortcut these people are, because they're smart and they're resourceful, and we should be leveraging that.
Thank you. And Karen Moran.
Well, currently I'm a water commissioner for the Sammamish Plateau Water and Sewer District, and so I'm already sitting on the King County Emergency Management Committee, and it has not even come up. Emergency management hasn't even come up tonight, which really surprises me, because we are on a plateau, and should we end up in an emergency, we have got to know where we're going to be getting our water, where are we going to be getting any of our resources. I'm also CERT, and been involved with the CERTs up here, and we need to, there's my 30-second sign. So there you go. So that would be my first choice. Transportation, that would be another, from being on the Planning Commission and running the Transportation Committee. I would love that. But I also have 3 kids. And affordable housing just tugs at me, because I have 3 kids. I can't afford to live in this city. And they all have, we're talking nurses, firemen, a biochem. We're talking kids that have got great degrees. I can't afford to live here.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time and your attention this evening. Thanks for your participation and your questions. Thank you, everyone, for being responsible about your time. I didn't have to come along with a sledgehammer for anybody's microphones. This is totally great. So just thank you, everyone.